Hey everyone, this is our 29th episode of the Spiky Signal Show, where I sit down with some of the most exceptional revenue leaders in the revenue space. The podcast is meant for all of us to explore the biggest problems facing customer facing teams, sharing the real challenges of sales and what revenue leaders deal with every day, whether it's pipeline visibility to coaching, deal velocity, channels, partnerships. We share the stories and strategies all here. I'm your host, Waleed Shrani, head of revenue at Spiky.ai, and today I'm here with Eric Braswell, former CRO at Jellyvision and head of channels at companies like Vista Equity and Walter Kluwer. Today we're talking about why indirect sales can outperform direct and when it can do that. Eric, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Well, why don't you just kick us off with a quick elevator pitch on who you are and what you do?
Sure. I have spent the majority of my career in sales and revenue leadership, particularly focused in technology companies that have a channel presence or an indirect sales presence. I have some opinions about the collaboration between direct and indirect, but I've done channel sales in multiple industries: telecommunications, data communications, software for commercial real estate, logistics, supply chain, and healthcare tech. So I've got a diverse background, but always focused with best practices and the models around channels and indirect sales as my career projection.
Awesome, awesome, love it. Well, let's start off with kind of a first question here, and I've been kind of noodling on this as well. I've talked to a couple of people, and some people have mixed feelings on it versus others. If you
Yeah.
had to start kind of a go-to-market motion from scratch, would you want to build direct first or indirect? I've seen both work out very successfully. I guess it really depends on the industry or business, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is the question that gets me in trouble with a lot of my peers in the channel industry. If you think of indirect as its own industry with its own best practices, I think the decision rests on what your timeline is. If you're in a really big hurry to start putting bookings on the board and delivering results quickly, I think the fastest way to do that is with direct. But if you're looking for long-term scale to really make an impact and to be able to build a repeatable revenue stream, then you know indirect takes longer, but I think the results are better. So the answer is really just what is your time and how much runway do you have before you have to start to deliver those results.
Yeah,
So
it
I've,
makes
I've
sense.
seen both, and I've done both.
Yeah.
And ideally, uh, I've never been much of a fan of having a company be only direct or only indirect. I like a combination of the two. So in a perfect world, I would focus on building both. But if you had to pick one, for speed, it's direct.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Why do you think some companies or CROs default to maybe indirect? Do they feel like they can scale faster with channel partnerships? What are your thoughts there?
Uh, so I don't know that you can scale faster, but you can certainly scale larger. And I think while there is more upfront investment in the indirect model initially, long term, I think the costs up against the scale and the results you're going to have, it's a much better deal for an organization. So if you have the knowledge and you have the time and the upfront investment dollars to be able to roll out an indirect motion, I think that's a much better decision for the company to pursue that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, the
Um,
counter to that is that I think that in the world of revenue leaders, those with indirect experience are in the minority. So I think that you find a lot of business leaders defaulting to direct simply because that's what they know. That there's a little bit of a veil of uncertainty around the indirect model or handling partner ecosystems. There's a lot of fear and nervousness around that. So I think the decision is often based on that rather than just the pure math of the decision.
so for those CROs that may be nervous or leaders may be nervous and wanting to bring in a indirect, strategy, what's kind of the first steps of kind of overcoming that and getting started? Like how do they bring that into the team and like where do they start?
So I think you have to look at, there's several steps when you're building out an indirect model and trying to work with partners is, you have to identify the right kind of partners, and you have to recruit them. Then you have to train them, and then you have to do the long-term management. Those are the four big buckets of what you do in your life as a partner manager or a leader with a partner presence. It's very important early on to identify what is the ideal partner. Just like you would identify what's your ICP for a product and your go-to-market motion, you do the same thing for a partner. You find the right fit, and you don't have to go huge numbers right away. Don't go out and try to recruit 400 partners. Recruit the first 5 or 10 who can start to deliver results for you. You can work out the kinks and get some best practices and realize where partners are most successful, because there are environments where partners are going to work great, and then there are environments where a direct sales motion is better. And depending on the industry and depending on the culture of your company and your product, you got to figure out where is that particular fit. So first thing I would do is figure out, what does an ideal partner look like? What industries do they play in? What kind of technical resources do they have? What types of resources or dollars for investing in the partnership does the partner bring to the table? And are they going to come with a book of business already, or are they looking to launch into something new? And then you get into the soft issues. So much of the success of an indirect model and a partnership depends on trust. And as a business leader, are you going to be able to make that leap to trust that partner to work with you? But the partner also has to have that trust as well, because if you think about it, if I'm a software publisher or a hardware manufacturer, and I'm talking to a potential ecosystem partner or a potential reseller, when I ask them to go out to market and represent my product, if I do a poor job as the manufacturing partner, I'm risking their business as well. So the trust has to go both ways, and you got to find a way to get to that as well. And I think that is a very early step that's really particularly crucial.
In your career, have you seen, the whole topic here is kind of like, can indirect sales outperform direct sales? Over your career, have you seen that happen? And oftentimes, if that does happen, what's kind of the 2 or 3 things that are leading to indirect kind of outperforming direct sales?
That's a great question. I've seen that in every role that I've ever had, from the partner programs that I've started from scratch to those that where I've joined an existing partner program and we've grown it. Each time I've seen the percentage of partner sales or partner revenue increase and eclipse the percentage of direct sourced revenue at each company. I think that done properly, that's always going to happen, because you have, I don't want to say an infinite number of partners, but in most cases, you're going to be able to have more partners than a company can afford to have in direct sales headcount. And it's just the whole concept of scale. I can go out and find a partner who's got 10 salespeople, and then if I find 10 more salespeople, 10 more partners with 10 salespeople, I've instantly got 100 salespeople, 100 feet on the street, versus how long is that going to take me to do that motion in a direct model? So if you get the right infrastructure and you have the right incentives for those partners to grow the business, and then you treat them well, then that scale, just the math means it's going to grow and it's going to eclipse the direct side of the business.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Now, I don't think that's the case in all segments of the business. There are areas where partners and ecosystems and resellers and ISVs are particularly effective. And then there's segments of the market where I believe that a direct motion is much more appropriate. That's why I think you have to have both.
Yeah. When direct sales starts to become a lot more appropriate, what does that typically look like? Is it, I'm assuming like B2C sales, for example. I can't imagine indirect will be any use. Usually B2B is kind of where indirect would play, right? Is there examples like that where, that kind of show that, hey, direct plays a lot more better here versus indirect?
So in the B2B world, and I want to get back to the B2C comment because I have a thought for you. But in the B2B world, in my experience, the large enterprise is served better by the direct motion. If you're selling to, say, a Fortune 100 company, they want to have a relationship with the manufacturer or with the software publisher. But if you go down market into the mid market or the SMB in the B2B market, that's where the relationship and the concept of the trusted advisor is much more important and much more influential. So that's where I point the partner efforts. I find them more successful in that. If you try to insert a partner or a middleman as they're perceived in something like a Fortune 100 sale or a really large enterprise, I don't know that that is well received by the customer or by the prospect. Maybe in some areas, but in most cases, I find that when a customer is of a really significant size, in their mind, they believe that they deserve to have a direct relationship with the actual manufacturer or software publisher. And they're not wrong about that. So that's the market. But on your B2C comment, I have a thought for you that I think, in my career and in conversations I've had when I've talked about indirect sales and channels and partnerships, I've always tried to make the case that the channel model, the indirect model, is its own industry. We have our own best practices of models and steps and things that we follow, metrics that we look at to measure success. But it exists in every part of everyone's life. And so I would imagine that you in your personal life have probably visited an indirect seller in the past 5 days and maybe never thought about it that way. But one of the most ubiquitous reseller channel partner businesses out in the market is a grocery store. When you go to a grocery store, you're buying someone else's product through a middleman. It's a type of channel. Just like the insurance industry. If you think about one of the original models of channel and reselling indirect is the broker for insurance. They're the reseller. So it's pervasive in our society and in our economy. Just a lot of people don't think about it that way.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Actually, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, because I'm typically a lot of the times I'm dealing with SaaS, AI, and if you're on the B2C side, there's not really like any distribution side. Like it's more like an app, for example. You can't really partner or do channel sales through an app, but
Right.
yeah, from the grocery perspective or insurance space, that's really interesting. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. Well, and the challenge in technology, particularly in SaaS, where I've spent a lot of my career, is, I think the numbers came back for 2025, something like 70% of global technology purchases flowed through an indirect model. But the year before it was 73. And the year before that it was 75, 76. And a lot of that dynamic is the ecosystem, it's the app, or it's the consumption-based model where it becomes difficult to have a reseller. So the old school reselling model is declining, but what we find are the organizations that engage in partner type business are making their money on the services. What they're doing for, say, an integration partner to integration partner, providing a combined solution, something like an ERP with an add-on or a bin admin tool. There's all kinds of technical integration combinations where a partner can go in and provide the services, and then that's where they show their true value. So it's a combination then of a direct sale versus a partner sale.
So when the two teams, I guess, are working simultaneously for the business to get increased revenue, for example, I think that's like the biggest metric everybody is trying to achieve from a direct or indirect perspective. Of course, there's going to be the conversation of incentives and economics and kind of shared, things like that. I've heard teams get really pissed off with partner channels and because they're stealing their commission and things like that. So how do you kind of design, I guess, like an incentive program that motivates both teams and doesn't step over each other's toes?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the amount of times I've been in this conversation in my career, I couldn't even tell you. So it goes a little bit to how the partner model started. So For example, if a leader started off with just direct sales, and say 5 years in, they decide, oh, we want to expand through a partner model. Immediately, that direct sales organization is going to feel threatened by the partnership. So there's a cultural aspect within the company that the top company leadership, if they want to have both a direct and a partner model, they really have to set the tone so that the entire organization understands the value of the partner. Now, most of the time, what I would love to have is I'd like to say that we're going to pay the direct rep and we're going to pay the partner, and they're both going to get full commission and full quota credit. Most of my CFO friends don't like that, and so we end up having to split. And I think in my career, I've had one instance where I got to pay full credit to both, but that only lasted for a year or two, and then it became too costly. In most cases, we end up splitting. But then you have to have really well-defined rules of engagement to determine, who owned what, who sourced the deal, who pursued most of it, and things have to be documented, and it has to be understood up front. And then those rules have to be enforced. And whether it's a direct rep or a partner rep who violates those rules, the company has to be willing to hold people accountable to follow those rules and make sure that appropriate credit's being provided. If you don't do that, then you end up setting a precedent that's not good and it's not healthy for the business.
Yeah, no, that's a really great take on that. I guess like as the future develops, into these AI agents and such, it'd be interesting to see how the partnership model pans out because, this is just like a thought. Maybe AI agents can become future partners to, indirect channels, maybe even sourcing or even co-closing on deals. So, and those AI agents don't need commission. So who knows where the future could take this? Have you heard of anything like that?
I've seen some chit chat about that, and I don't know. This maybe I'm being a little too old school. For me, the value in the partnership has always been that trusted advisor component. That you have a customer who has a relationship across multiple product lines with a partner, and the owner of that prospect really trusts that partner provider, and that's why they're going there. And so I have a hard time envisioning that an AI agent would do that, but maybe the AI agent can be a sales resource, and then the partner is providing services to support that configuration, optimization, some of those types of things, because it is certainly going to be a factor, especially when you start to look at the increase of consumption-based pricing versus just straight margin. The world is changing a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no, totally. I resonate with that as well. I don't think AI could really replace an account executive or a seller that's even on the direct side. Sure, maybe like sourcing, lead generation, these things, maybe even a discovery call or a demo. But the relationship with the human in the loop is crucial to I think a sales motion in any regard, whether it's direct or indirect. So
Right.
totally agree with that. And so we're gonna wrap up here, but I kind of want to leave you with one last question, and I always ask this to all my guests. For the next
Okay.
episode, who do you know that would be a great revenue leader to bring on here?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. You know what? If I will tell you, if you're interested in pursuing some really cutting edge thinking around partnerships and ecosystems and how the market is changing, particularly between North America versus, say, Europe, there's a leader, a gentleman by the name of Jay McBain, who is sort of, I don't know, I think a lot of us in the partner world think of him as the godfather of channels. He's been just a terribly influential consultant. He's got a lot of research and just does a phenomenal job. I think if you could land him, that'd be quite a get.
Amazing. I'll see if I can reach out to him. Do you know him personally?
Not very well. I could
Okay.
send him.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, if anyone else comes to mind too, please feel free to introduce me. I'd love to have them on the episode. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, likewise, Eric. This was a really good one. Thank you so much. All right.